Hey, sports fans! How's everybody doing? It's Aaron Hackett here again, and I wanted to do a sports special, quick video here for those of you that maybe treat athletes, those of you that do work with high schools, colleges, or at least athletes that are in those areas. I thought this is a really good topic because of the time of year that it is. Right now, it's high school football is in full swing, college football is in full swing. Other sports are going on. I've got my sport hat here. My alma mater is the University of Utah. Go Utes! Woo! And so, it's that time of year, so I wanted to do a video in particular to it and maybe answer a couple questions that people might have out there. And so, this is something I see kind of often in notes when people are treating athletes, whether they are college or high school, or maybe they're on, some kind of comp team, whatever it may be. I remember treating them. One of the companies I used to work for, they were really heavy into high school athletics, and now I see a lot of notes coming for high school athletics. So I wanted to talk about a few, not just high school athletics, also college. Even from the various divisions, even to the top D1 type of athletes, I see all kinds of requests for those as well. And there's a couple of issues with some of those, and a lot of questions that always come up. Just last week, I was on a call with a provider who was seeing someone. They were a Division I athlete. I believe it was a female. Probably, I want to say it was soccer, and she had ACL reconstruction. The patient was doing very well. They were getting to the point to where now it's time to start thinking about sports-specific type of stuff. And the provider wanted to, they wanted to keep seeing her multiple times a week to progress a lot of the sports-specific activity. Now, the problem with this is that patient, up to that point, that provider had been seeing her based on just the health plan, the general health plan that she was under with her parents. So, unfortunately, most of those health plans don't cover athletic type of injuries, especially if that injury occurs during a game or a practice. And so, unfortunately, those health plans, the way that they are written, the way that the contract is that there's that they can't, that it will only cover so much. And so, what's a provider to do? What's a patient to do? I want to talk about a few things, okay? Luckily for that patient, she still had a few issues. The provider had not done return to sport testing yet, which most cases is going to be covered. Once they reach that certain percentage to show that they are about ready to return to sport, that's where you kind of start thinking about cutting them off. So I'm going to get rid of the hat here. But yeah, go Utes. So one of the first things I wanted to mention really quick, the NCAA in general requires that all institutions certify, and the institution can choose how they do this, but certify that student athletes have coverage for medical expenses occurred from athletically related injuries. So that coverage needs to cover up to the NCAA catastrophic deductible, which I believe is somewhere between $70,000 to $90,000. So the student athlete or their parents is going to be responsible for that much, $70,000 to $90,000, until the NCAA starts to pay for something, unless there's other stipulations. Okay. So part of that is that they need coverage for medical expenses incurred from an athletically related injury. Now, if they only have a health plan through their parents that's a general medical health plan, most of those, as the contract is written, they exclude high-risk sports type of injuries. So that athlete technically needs some kind of a rider or an additional policy that is specific to expenses occurred from a sports-related injury. In all of my years working with high school and some college athletes, and even a little bit of pro, was one person that I ever remember that had the specific additional policy, and that's because he was hurt when he was actually playing in the NFL. None of the other, I'd never even heard of this before, and so it's kind of why I wanted to look it up. And then the second thing, really quick, when you start to see a high school or a college athlete right on that first visit need to come up with an understanding between them and their parents about how things are going to be paid, how things can play out, and that if it's all going under just a basic medical plan, that at some point that plan is probably going to cut off payment before that patient may be completely ready to return to sport. And so hopefully they already have that rider or additional policy. If not, then it may be something where, okay, they need to start discussing cash pay, or you're going to have to coordinate with the team and find out if there's something that they also pay for. Maybe they do that through their athletic trainer. But start those discussions early so it's not a surprise for anybody. And then number 3, and we've talked about this before in generalities, don't highlight the patient as an athlete and the super elite Division I athlete. Focus on their functional deficits. Focus on their basic daily functions that they cannot do, especially if this is being covered by a general medical policy. Don't just do their goals and their functions as a percentage of what they can't do sports specific. So instead of saying something like they're only at 20% of cutting, jumping, and running, list something specific, especially if they're still using assistive devices. Things like patient can only do half a flight of stairs. Hopefully you're using standardized outcomes like an LEFS or something of that nature also, so that you're highlighting what things in their basic daily life that they can't do and why they still need to see you. If the only thing that you can talk about is sports specific and that this patient is super elite and they need to see you because they're elite and they can't be elite anymore, that documentation looks like you're treating them for a sports-related injury, and so that health plan's not going to cover it. So hopefully that kind of helps answer that a little bit. So again, to recap, if they're a student athlete, they really should have their own specific policy in regards to sports-related injuries. And hopefully they already know that and they've already been told that, especially if they're at a collegiate level. That should have been something they were told at orientation. So find out about that. Also, at the very start, discuss what the options are, what's going to pay for what you think they need, and continue those discussions throughout the care so that there's no surprises when all of a sudden their parent's health plan says they're not paying for anything else. And lastly, even though that patient is elite, that's great, they're a super good athlete, focus on the daily activities, the daily functions that they can't do first. Get them to the point to where they are ready to return to sport, but don't focus on the sport if they're not even close to that. If they're not practicing, if they're not playing their sport, if they're not running, kicking, jumping, all those things, keep the goals related to their daily activities, going to school, being with friends, being able to study, going to work if they also have work. All of those kinds of things. And of course, as I always say, make sure you're using those standardized scales and outcomes because that's very helpful. So, hope that was helpful. I appreciate every time you guys watch, all the comments that you leave. I love it. I love you guys. Thanks for watching. Again, go Utes. Woo! Have a great sports-filled weekend, everybody.